How do you know when you should buy your first or next investment property? Hi, I'm Sam Powell.
And I'm Jaryd Krause, and we are the hosts of the Property Powers Australia podcast. And in this episode, we're chatting about how to get yourself set up to buy your first property before you even start your first job and even earning an income. We also discuss how often should you reassess your property portfolio and the things you should be checking when you do reassess it to decide what steps to actually take next to reinvest, wait and hold, maybe change some things with your loan, save a bit of money.
Yeah, there's a fair bit in this one, and a bit of a riff and a rant, which is, the Property Pals way. We also jump into about having a strategy. Look, it's not always about making more money via capital growth or income. There are some really important things to also consider when you're going through your journey and thinking about what that future holds for you and even your family or your future self. And we also share a couple of really good examples of what type of strategies that you could take depending on where you're personally at in your life. And it might be either starting your journey, building a portfolio, or even halfway through. There's some really good insights in here that I hope you get a lot out of.
Yeah, before we get stuck in the episode, obviously this is not the only way we can help you for free. We have our How to Maximize Your Borrowing Capacity mini course. Head to propertypals.au/resources to check out that tool to work out what your borrowing capacity is that can help you buy a superior asset. Enjoy the pod. Welcome to Property Pals, the podcast where we share everything around how to build a property portfolio, from researching areas, financing, structuring, buying, selling, and reinvesting to live a life of financial independence. As a disclaimer, any information shared by myself, Jaryd, Sam, and the Property Pals team is strictly general and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should consider seeking independent legal, financial, and taxation advice from a qualified professional. Samuel, hello. How are you doing?
Jaryd Krause, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm interested to talk about this pod today, because I love a good strategy. And I guess the main premises of this chat for people listening is to sort of know when you can buy your first investment property. Like, how much money do you need? Work out the strategy, and then also, I guess, once you've started buying property, like, when can you buy the next one, and then the next one, and the next one.
Yes.
I'm curious. You've been having a lot of chats with a lot of clients lately, and having this conversation, which you just want to share with everybody live. So, how do you want to skin this cat, for lack of a better term?
Well, I'll preface it because I'm terrible at introductions to basically give people a bit of an insight. So, strategy for me is the number one thing you should start with. A lot of people are out there, they spend a lot of time and money running around looking at properties that they think they can afford. Like, if they haven't seen a mortgage broker, then that's a complete and utter waste of time. But some people do see a mortgage broker, get a borrowing capacity, and then they start hunting. But I like to start. I say to people, it starts all the way back to what it is that you're actually trying to achieve in life. It's more like a philosophical type of thing. People from the investment space, they're generally not sort of running around wanting to buy properties. They're wanting to buy their time and their freedom back in the future through investing. So I like to sit back and go, everyone's got a different, like, when you're talking to professionals in the industry, everyone's got a different position. So what I try to sit back with people and go, well, what is it that you're like? What's the big goal? Is it investing to then sell down to buy that dream home, or is it investing to give you passive income so you can retire? Is it a mix of both? Do you want to put that principal place of residence in the mix in 10 years time whilst holding investments? Everyone's different. And then the other point that I'd like to sort of like help people understand is that there's a lot of, in the industry of, property, the buying space, is strategy sessions. Everyone's running a strategy session. What does that actually mean? 9 times out of 10, probably even more than that. 9 times at a time, a strategy session is really just a salesperson picking up the phone and trying to convince you to buy their product. What the issue with that is that they get paid for on a commission base to get you on board. But a true strategy session is generally laying out what it is that your bigger goals are and how can you get to achieve that. The issue, I guess, from my line of work is that I do this once you're a paid customer, because there's a lot of people out there that sort of I say it, my time's limited, right? Like, and I can't be talking to everybody and anybody about a conversation. So I thought it'd be really good to have this conversation recorded, put it on a podcast so people can listen to it and have a good understanding. And write in with questions, or obviously put comments in these chat bots below, because we can try and help you out as much as possible. But the strategy side of things for me really comes down to, even starting from saying, before we jump to the pod, a strategy can start from when you get your first job, or even before you even get your first job. Thinking about that longer term game of what it is that you're trying to get out of life. Because, mate, I think we're 30, you're 36, I'm 35 at the moment. The last 20 years, you hear all the older people telling you, like, oh, it just goes so fast. And I guess I'm that older person now. And I think we're quite young at 35. It's definitely that misconception of people thinking 35 people, like, it's an old thing. But what can really make your life even better when you do reach 35, which is inevitable, we're all going old, is to put things in place as soon as possible to make your life a lot easier throughout your life journey. And that comes down to, I guess, those things that you and I love talking about, which is health, relationships, and wealth. And obviously, being a property podcast, the wealth side of things contributes to people having a better health, because being healthy is sometimes expensive with all our organic foods and all that. But then, having money to enjoy the relationships around you too is important. So,
I've got so much to say to that. I want to make a clear distinction between a strategy call, somebody that runs a strategy call for sales, and what you do, Sam. First, I want to talk about age as well. I wrote this down the other day when I was texting somebody I thought about it. This is I like to make little quotes and stuff. And what I have to say about age is just a title that society gives us to allow ourselves and everyone else to judge our lives in some way, shape, or form based on where we are or where we aren't. So think of that or take that as you wish, but
that's deep.
Yeah, it's very deep. I'm a deep guy. So I also wanted to talk about strategy calls, because I came from this realm as well in business. I used to do strategy calls. We called them discovery calls. And I would sell people into my programs. And then I started hiring people to sell people into my programs, because like you, Sam, I worked my way out of that job and became far better at the real strategy, running the business and actually getting people results, which was a high leverage task and better rewarded than a discovery call or a strategy call. So people that do take you on a strategy call to sell you into a program, they are trained in typically sales, not strategy. Whereas Sam, you were trained in sales at the start of your career in a bunch of different things. You're very good at sales. And now you don't do that because you do a far higher leverage task that gets rewarded better, which is real strategy. And there's a massive difference between somebody giving you on a sales call a cookie cutter approach, is like buy your first property this way or do it this way, versus somebody that isn't doing sales calls and saying like, cool, once we've actually got your investment dollars and you know how much money you've got and you're going to spend, let's actually work out what your strategy is. And typically people think, I just want to buy a couple of properties. That's what they think their strategy is, right? And I know that this is the same with in business. People come to me and say, Jaryd, I want to buy a business. I'm like, yeah, you want to buy a business, but that's not what your real goal is. your real goal, typically people think it's money to be able to retire early or to have a dream home. But I believe that the real goal that people really want is freedom, because once you have that money, then you can have the freedom to acquire that dream home or the freedom to choose to work or not. And so then we need to classify, like, what does freedom actually look like for you? Is it not working at all? Or is it 10 hours a week? Or is it 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 30? Is it working 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day? Is it living in a different location? Is it living part in one location and maybe another location? What does this actually look like for you? And then how do we reverse engineer that to where you're at today, and then put a time, like try and put a linear time frame on it. And once we have that time frame, fill in the gaps with the vehicle and different vehicles, which are different properties along the way. Is that how would you explain it, Sam? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'd add in there is, I love that question. Is that how you would explain it? Sales. Yeah, it's. I think the best sales is just knowing your craft. The more you know and understand, the better you can help people. I think that is what true sales really is helping people get to what it is that they actually truly want. A lot of the issues is that the sales teams aren't they don't specialize, don't have the history, the background in a certain industry that they're selling in, because they're hired as salespeople and they jump from different product types throughout their career.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the biggest amplification on my, I guess, career growth is just helping people get to what is it they actually truly want. And yeah, I'm going down this world of strategy because I wholeheartedly believe in it, because I think people, they're not, especially with property and business as well, it's a high ticket item which to get in and out of can cost you a lot of money. So don't waste your time and money. And there's a big, there's always that FOMO sort of things, especially in the current market that we're in, 2024. There's heat in certain pockets in Australia where it's very challenging to buy into, and people are just jumping in. They're not thinking, all right, well, why am I buying this investment property? Yes, you have money, cool, and you want to do something with it, and you know that Joe Bloggs down the road, or Jane, she's just bought in Perth and she's made 100 grand in 12 months, and you want to do the same thing. It's easy to go and buy something. It's hard to sell it in the property space. And then it goes down further into, well, we only are limited into what we know and the vehicles to get us to that financial freedom. So how to best do it? Do you want to grow a multi-property portfolio because you believe in property as an investment class over shares, or running a business or multiple businesses? What suits you? Because there are multiple ways to make a passive income. It just depends on what your time availability is and what you're willing to put to it, which goes to your point. Do you want to, we all still crave purpose, right? Like, even when my father-in-law, hopefully you listen to this one, because he's a funny man, but he's so switched on. He's like 60, 63, probably looks more like 75. Ray, get out there. No, but his brain is so active that retirement for him, I think, is something that is not in his best interest, because he'll need something to jump into to give him that purpose and to keep his brain active, and that will also contribute to his longevity, in the long run. So yeah, are you 20 hours? Do you want to dedicate 20 hours, 15 hours, 30 hours? What is it that suits you? And also, comes down to it, what kind of level of impact you want. Having a 40 property portfolio is going to be quite time consuming. It'll be more active in that you should be checking it in all your properties. I like to do 12-month reviews. Doing a 12-month review on a 40 property portfolio is taxing, but then it goes down to, well, if you want to grow that, which is completely fine, is that even possible in these days? Because, I mean, the lending environment for properties changed dramatically. I think the 40 property portfolio days are very few and far between, and you need to be earning really high levels of income. But my question to you is, why own 40? Why don't sell down and then only own 10 really high quality assets and less of a time consuming thing? But thinking like that and working with people that are looking at these things every day, it helps me understand, because you can go and accumulate properties, 3 properties in your personal name, and they're really good quality assets. You've got diversification in different states. That will set you up for, a great future. But if you want to do more than that, if you want to really get into this, understanding how trust works, do you go trust first? Do you go personal name? What's that balance? Understanding even those deeper questions into, like, you might be single now, Jaryd. Will you be single in the future? Will you have children, or will you want to live back in Australia? There's these what if scenarios which just get your brain thinking, and you might not have the answer now, but it's good to talk about it up front, because you're at least putting a bit more of a plan in place as just having cash, throwing at a property and seeing what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very smart decision that somebody that wants a family to think about why buy property that's not just for you, and how are you going to distribute it. I think about this as well. I probably won't have kids. I don't know if that's my path, but I do think about how do I distribute wealth in a very holistic way once I get to a certain age, and maybe my nieces and nephews, I would like to foster some strategy and wealth for them, or help them foster it, I should say, in different ways. And how do you distribute that it's, they're not paying tax, I'm not paying tax. Yeah. So I think people, the strategy is massive. It's absolutely everything, and strategy will change as your life evolves, and your desires evolve as well. So I guess I wanted to ask Sam, how do you? So it sounds like you need to start with the end in mind. Typically,
yep.
The end is always an ever-evolving, changing thing. How do you bring that back to the present day, and what's the main first question that people need to be answering?
Yeah, well, I mean, so many different ways, but I'll get more into the weeds of those that are actually looking for investment, they've got that deposit. I guess the strategy side of things, just to sort of fast track all that, is save 10 to 20% of whatever you earn from the day you start earning money. Save money; it'll give you options in the future. Don't take too high a risk with that initial cash, because it's more risk, detrimental if you lose it. High risk, high returns on that front. So for me personally, going into shares that are more liquid but less volatile. So you're more of your ASX 200 or ETF type shares. Dollar cost averaging in will help you get that, initial deposit. You'll get to a stage in your life. For me, I do feel that when you're starting to invest hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, property seems a safer bet, and historically it's performed quite well. It's harder to get to that stage because the entry levels are quite high, ranging around 60 to 100 grand in cash to actually go and start. So the strategy for most of those first timers is start saving, stop spending money on things that you don't really need. But once you get to that level, this is the big part about what I do is people come to me and they're like, oh, I've got this, I've got 100 grand cash, got my borrowing capacity of 500 grand. I'm looking for $600,000 property, want cash flow, want capital growth, want subdivision, want granny flat. They got all these ideas because of things that they've heard, but they don't understand the complexities of, what is it that you're actually really trying to achieve, because that's people's issue, is that they're running around, they hear things, and that's really what they're coming to me for as well, is to go I've got all these ideas, but what is the best thing for me?
Yeah.
And then the question that I start to break down with people is what are you trying to achieve long term? And then manufacture a strategy in place to go, if you want to keep accumulating properties, and say you're more cash flow focused because you might be later in your life, looking at cash flow positive or neutral properties, they're very hard to find. But for trust structures and accumulation of multiple properties, that is a smart strategy to start out with. But then people with like yourself or higher income, that they can look at the negative gearing side of things where you're still buying established properties in growth locations that's growing in value, but that negative cash flow component actually offsets that taxability or your tax liability at the end of the year, which is a smarter way to play as well. So just having those sort of conversations, just go, well, what suits your risk profile? And then also giving them realities of, I can go and buy you a cash flow positive property, but at this stage in the market, you're out in the boonies where no one really wants to sort of go, and the capital growth's rubbish. So what's the point of making, $2,000 a year in cash flow? Because that can get eaten up in a second if your hot water system blows, and you're getting no capital growth. What's the point? So working through those processes to go, well, what is the best option for you in order for you to get to your goals? And that's where that strategy point comes down to. When you're working from the end in mind, it breaks it down to go, well, what you're looking for is a $600,000 property that's giving you a 5% gross yield, which when you break it down to a net cash flow basis, it's probably costing you $200 to $100 a week. Because once you start paying down debt over the few years, rents increase, you'll get to that neutral cash flow, positive cash flow. If you've got time on your side, obviously debt gets paid down, rents increase, you'll get to that more passive income in the future. If you're chasing really high yielding properties, then let's have a conversation around commercial. Get your brain thinking about what that actually entails. It's not the easiest thing to get your head around. It's definitely not the cheapest thing to get into. There's a lot of costs involved, but the vehicle itself is very, influential to your positive cash flow target later in life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the explanation of start saving as early as you can. What I actually like, I think me, when I would grow, my parents were really good at teaching us to save, which is great. And I think your parents were as well. You started saving pretty young as well. I would, if I had my time over again, I would like to call that investing, because people feel like they're waiting on the sidelines so long to invest and before they can actually get to a property, investing in property or a larger asset. But if you actually change your mindset earlier at a younger age from I'm a saver to I'm an investor, is some psychological switch and you behave differently. That's what I know to be true. And if you turn that around from going, I'm going to save my money into an ETF, which I think is the best strategy that you laid out, Sam, and you say I'm going to invest that money into an ETF, then you switch yourself to become an investor. And when you finally get to that 60K, then you can start to have these discussions of how do I reinvest this money into something that's going to give me a far better opportunity because I'm using leverage. And then you're an investor from day dot, versus you might put yourself in a different category of people, different category in society as a saver. And I think that is when you do put yourself in the shoes of an investor, I'm pretty sure, and I'll guarantee that you're going to start reading more investment books and thinking about investing versus I'm just saving, I'm not ready yet to invest, so why would I bother learning yet?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. What I'd also jump in and say is the mindset and the psychological things that you'll learn just about markets and things increasing and decreasing. It's a great sort of learning curve with not a lot of money, and also it's teaching you from a younger age. This is just my opinion as well, and how I think it's a smart way to start about it. But you're paying yourself first in that sense. So whatever it is, take a percentage. If it's $50, $100 a week, 10%, 20% of your net take home pay, just dollar cost averaging into a market, because you're sacrificing things that you might value more at that time, the short-term goals as opposed to long-term. And by that, I mean, I was 16, 17, 18, once as well, having the new surfboard, the new shoes, new jacket, the new shirt. going out, socializing with your friends. Like there's things that you do, which, on the biggest scheme of things, you can still do. You just don't do as much of it. Like instead of going out and buying cocktails, maybe buy like a ginger beer or something like that if you want to go down that path, or don't fall prey to those toxicity sort of things which don't get you to that bigger goal. And even if it's like, I still think investing in yourself, in like education and even travel experience is still a good investment, but you need the money to do that. Unless you've got that trust fund behind you. But still, even if you do have the trust fund behind you, having the knowledge of respecting money, because there's all those stories of people that win the lottery, right, and they end up losing it or spend it all in the first few years, and it's like they haven't built up the habits to actually, and the knowledge to hold such a large and respect, I guess, a large cash flow into their bank account.
I think of wealth not as the amount of money or the amount of something. I think of wealth as the container, and if the container is broken or leaky, it can't hold the wealth. And the container is, I would say, the infrastructure that the container is built on is your mindset and your values around that certain particular thing that you're going to hold in the container. Because, if it's a container where you can just get a lot of money into and it just goes out really fast, then how are you really going to, hold that wealth?
Sounds like the Jaryd Krause leaky bucket.
Yes, it is. It's the leaky bucket syndrome.
We've talked about that earlier on in the pod. So go back to the foundation episodes. We rant on this a little bit. So I want to sort of keep it back on track with strategy. But there's some important insights.
So when somebody's with, they've maybe bought their first property. We've talked a lot about somebody that's just starting out, somebody that's already going through their property journey. Like, what sort of discussions are you having with them about strategy, and what are the things that they need to be thinking about, maybe quarter way through, midway through, or 3/4 of the way through towards achieving their goal?
Well, you don't know what you don't know, and in the current property landscape, is some people that they might have investment properties, and there's not been an ability to pull equity out of that current holdings to go again. It might be, what is it that we're truly chasing? If you've got a strong cash flow from your income and you're making a bit of money, what are the best vehicles to use? Because property, there's superannuation, there's trusts, there's personal names, there's spouse names, there's many different, entities that you can go into. And many different property types, but the landscape that we're dealing with at the moment is we've gone from lack of education to over education, and people are getting stuck in analysis paralysis, and they only know what they see on these short 60-second YouTube clips or whatever basically we have to do to get people's eyeballs. And there's a lot of risks in a number of strategies, and generally those that are touting the high returns are the ones that get the the more susceptible people, because they're chasing something that, yes, you can get the returns, but there's also the risk element, and where you are in that property cycle can really, it can ruin you. Like if you go and build a brand new duplex pair on the outskirts of a town, because that's where you're going to be doing most of these projects. They're in multi-hundred lot subdivisions. Yes, they've grown really well in the last few years. Well done. Everywhere has. So that's a changing environment. That's not going to be happening. If you want to go deeper into the complexities of understanding strategy, is also understanding the global economic environment, the national economic environment. It's historically, the growth rates that we've seen in Australian property is not the norm. Like Perth's gone up 22% in the last year. Brisbane's gone up 14%. Adelaide's 15%. That's just not to expect. Like the average growth rate in Australia sits around 6%. So it's like, that's where I sit there and go, the implications, which has never happened before, of shutting down pretty much the world like all the ports and everything like that. The first time in our, I guess, species existence where we've actually been able to communicate what's going on an international basis, and work together to stop the spread of some virus, like that's never happened before. So what we're actually experiencing throughout the world is the ripple-on effects of a population density throughout the world that's continued to grow, yet all the raw materials have been stopped. So we're just catching up for lost time, and the ripple effect of that is dramatic. Leading further into is like, those, just buy a block of land and build a house on it or a duplex on it. That's never going to be like a forever profitable strategy. Just because you've always got land supply risk, and sort of just talking through these different things. Like there's shiny brochures and all that you need to be mindful of.
I spot on agree with you. There's so much information out there that it's analysis by paralysis. So paralysis by analysis. Sorry, and it is confusing. And it's not just investing in just property. It's everything. What should I do? How should I do it? Because we literally have infinite options now with everything we do, and it's keeping people very stuck and unmotivated, even though we've got the most opportunity ever. And that's also brings us back to like when each time you acquire a property, it's a smart decision to reassess the strategy and come up with a new strategic acquisition or strategy to acquire the next property based on what resources you have or don't have, what your limitations are in terms of borrowing capacity, and then how, and your opportunity, and then how do you get to that goal closer or faster now with where you're at, right? So would you say every single property that you purchase, you should have a strategy around it and re-strategize before you acquire?
Yeah, well, there's no perfect property, and the property that you acquire, because I'm on that camp of buying established in built-out locations is, historically has performed the best, especially in the growth locations that we target now with short-term data as well. That purchase, you don't know. Like you might have a budget of 650, but a really good opportunity might come up at 450 in that region or 500, where you do get that. I do think that having a good cash flow component is really important for your growth, and it's also easy to hold that asset through a longer period. So to find something that has good cash flow is important, but you just need to understand at what cost does that cash flow come. So there's different properties that come up. It's all right, we've purchased this, we've now got this is the income coming through. Reassessing every 12 months. For me personally, as a strategist, I just like, your life is always changing. Think about what happened, where you were 5 years and what you were thinking about to where you are today. And then even go back to 10 years and then bring it back to 2 years. It's constantly changing. Your life changes. And that is the beautiful thing about this life that we live, is that is the only constant that we have, is change. So embracing that, but not getting too hell bent on wanting to be a property billionaire and mogul, because you might be off going other opportunities in your life, which I'm still a proponent of. Yeah, everyone's like, oh, you save your money and just build this massive portfolio, but you can't take it with you as well. Like there's a balance in living the present, because you're not guaranteed tomorrow either. But sorry, a bit of a rant there. But every 12 months I definitely reassess it, because it's like, well, where are we at? Where's the income levels, especially rents? Looking at, like I've said this in multiple podcasts, where it's look at what you can save money on: insurance costs, property management costs. Interest rates are a big one. If your loan to value ratio, with that increase in growth, chances are you can jiggle your interest rate to be more competitive, because there's less of a risk on the bank's front. Or there might be those cashbacks going at some stage with all these banks, where you can refinance, get a lower rate, get a bit of money. Like there's always it's a changing environment. People are always competing for your money from a debt perspective.
Yeah.
That's how banks make money. So it's just, every 12 months, see where you are, where, opportunities could lie. And, if there's not there that year, then chances are it'll probably be the following year. I think that's a really healthy place to start. But each year it sets you up for, all right, well, where are we now? Like you might have $400,000, but I'm saying that there's opportunities in the market where there is good growth prospects and decent cash flow at $400,000 in this market, which could give you diversification into, parts of like a different state. And with that extra leverage and that growth that we're seeing in the market, that can really help you, give you that couple of years good growth, reasonably good cash flow. And then if you want to sell down certain assets to then go into a larger, either commercial property from an investment point of view, you've got that asset base. Or if you're really, really desiring that principal place of residence at this stage in your life because, you've done the rent vesting strategy, you've got you're really happy where you want to live, you want to manufacture equity in and not have to deal with, any capital gains tax with principal place of residence, and your partner might be saying, let's do this. It's like, well, there's an opportunity there. What does that look like? Understanding the market cycle that you're in is really important. And then going even further is to, well, what's the finance strategy? What broker are you dealing with? Because like every industry, there's good, there's bad, and there's rubbish. It's just knowing who to talk to is the other point.
So it's like, I would say for somebody that's investing in property, based on this conversation, Sam, is that invest your way into a deposit through maybe an ETF or stocks or some other way until you can get that 60K, maybe 100K deposit, and then you acquire your property, and then every single year from there is you reassess your optionality on how much cash flow do I have from investing my money into an ETF or other stocks, or even investing it into my offset account against my initial property that I just purchased. How much cash do I have there? And then what sort of equity do I have available? You also need to do a portfolio check on the value of your properties to see what equity you have available, to also at that same time decrease your interest rate if you can, or challenge the interest rate of the bank to decrease it. And then you can sort of see what your optionality is with equity. And then so you've got your equity sum, you've got your investment savings sum, offset account, or wherever that investment dollar is. And then you can go away and speak to a broker and get some optionality on, borrowing capacity. And then you sort of go, okay, how do we strategize this? Like, I've got X amount of money. Every single year you do this, can I buy a property, or can I buy the type of property that I want? And you do that every single year. And maybe one year you buy a property, maybe one year you don't buy a property. Maybe you wait 2 or 3 years and you acquire a large property, like maybe a commercial or something different. So it sounds like every year you need to really have a strategy session. Right?
Yeah. It doesn't, like, it's also just having a chat with your trusted advisor, just like as you would a financial planner, an accountant. Like, I'm not here touting, like, probably 9 times out of 10 it's a do nothing, but at least you know the value of your properties, you know that you're getting market rent, and you know that there's options coming forward to you in the future. Like, at the very least, that's that property side. Financial planners under their financial services license cannot talk or advise around property. Mortgage brokers are more finance specialists. Like, there's this sort of I guess I left the financial planning industry because it lacked that sort of excitement of, just direct investing. And then I was seeing the returns in property, and, having a property economics sort of background, it always frustrated me as to why they wouldn't. So I thought I'd, jump into this space and really enjoying it. But it still irks me that, financial planners, like, they can't and they won't. So it's like, well, Australians love investing in property, and historically the gains out of property are, quite similar to the stock market, if not more. Like, we've done studies with through leverage, it's actually more, but that's another debate for another time. I know some share traders that actually they far outperform it, but they're doing it full time. So, so they should.
I mean, different horses for different courses. But yeah,
But
I mean, is there anything else you want to add, Sam, before we wrap up, other than like just reach out hello@propertypals.au for some strategy sessions from Sam?
Yeah. Well, oh man, I could riff on this all day. But there's just like there's so many scenarios, and this is the other thing too. Is like property strategies is not just investment. I've got clients that are coming to me saying, "We love where we live. We've got our kids; they're 10 years old. We know that property prices have been increasing, and we want to get." We want to start now because we know that if they're not going to go to, university or become a tradesman, like regardless, we want to put plans in place to put them into a property where they can rent from us and potentially take that over and be the owner of that. So they're investing in their future. So strategies can come in so many different ways where it's like, all right, well, in that case, let's go and once again, get an understanding of what our plan is, because then I work directly with mortgage brokers now, and more I'm doing it, and even financial planners and accountants, because it's the team around you that's important. And it's just sitting there going, well, if you only have this borrowing capacity, but you love this location, what's the best asset type that is going to give you capital growth, but also give you the bigger rock in the jar, which is, proximity to your children, to, their, putting a roof over their head, and then also investing in their future. So understanding which suburbs are going to outperform, others. That's the other whole side of it, where it's like everyone's different. Not everyone's chasing, capital growth or cash flow. They've got other intentions in mind. But what irks me the most is that most people just take the easy route, and often, this is why it irks me, the easy route is not the best for their financial future. And what I mean by that, like as an example, I've had a client who, they want to buy in Sydney, right? And they've got a budget of $1 million. And in Sydney, that sounds like, if you're not from Sydney, that sounds like a decent budget. But Sydney, it's not much if you want to go sort of like that more like, within 10 Ks of the city. They want to do that strategy with their children, and they wanted to go down, well, what's the best asset type? They're looking at a 1-bedroom apartment in a nice modern medium-rise complex, and it's just, I'm sitting there going, 1 bedrooms historically perform poorly. You're buying a newer product. Yes, you'll get depreciation. The cash flow looks okay, but you're going to get no capital growth. Like, that's actually not contributing to your child's future, because if you invest in the right asset, that is going to give you capital growth and that little level of cash flow that you want, the security for your kid, you can then use that. Say that they're 10 now. When they're 18, if they don't want to live there, that's fine. But you know what? Someone else will. And also that asset's going to be worth a lot more in 8 years than that 1 bedroom in that medium-rise modern apartment where you've got so much like supply. So,
yeah, it sounds like, I would put this down to strategy helps people make an emotional decision in the smartest possible way.
We'll write that down in your quote book.
Because when you think about it, you've got somebody here that's making an emotional decision with their money, but they're like, I want to do this the best possible way. It's emotional because I want to make sure it's, it's going to help me and my future and my children. But I want it to like perform the best way possible as well. But even if you relate it back to that person who is a single person that doesn't know whether they're going to get married or have kids, and they're first buying their first acquisition for a property, they're making an emotional decision as well, and they just need some strategy around it. So guys, reach out, get some strategy from Sam.
Yeah, give us a few scenarios. Happy to sort of workshop with you, and I mean, as always, like leave a couple of comments below. Happy to unpack a few things. I guess the last thing I'd say is, I mean, Jaryd and I have coaches, mentors to help us grow. We're going to be getting one of the top Australian property strategists on the podcast the next coming weeks. So listen out for that one. Jordan De Jong's coming on. He built a strategy software that we use, and it's a beautiful way to like putting these things into a 30-year plan to help you understand from where you are to where you want to be, breaking that down. So
Love it.
questions are always helpful. We help everyone grow. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys. See you on the next one.